Okay, everybody, these are your notes and important items for Chapter 3. You can either read the chapter first or watch the video first. It doesn't matter which way you do it, but do make sure that you complete the reading and do a dialectical journal for Chapter 3. Some important items to note in Chapter 3. This is an extended part of the story of Scout's schooling. When she gets home with Walter, Walter having been invited by Jem over for lunch, we get a really good sense of Calpurnia through characterization. So we have here a little passage that tells us about Calpurnia as a person, saying that her grammar becomes erratic when she is angry, but normally she was as well spoken as any of the other inhabitants of Macomb. So Atticus kind of informing the kids that Calpurnia was very educated. And we also see after Calpurnia kind of scolds Scout asks Atticus if he ever thought of getting rid of her, all right? Whether or not this would be an option for them. Suggested Atticus lose no time in packing her off. Well, we get a sense of how important Calpurnia is to the family in Atticus's response. I've no intention of getting rid of her now or ever. We couldn't operate a single day without Cal. You ever thought of that? How much she does for you, and he tells Scout to mind her. This is our first kind of impression through Calpurnia. So up here in where Atticus talks about her education, and then again down here where he's talking about how important she is to the family, we get a sense of how Atticus feels about race. Calpurnia is not disposable to him. So that becomes an important thing as the story moves on. We also have in this chapter this hilarious scene in which Miss Caroline, poor Miss Caroline, has had a kind of difficult time of it. She sees a cootie, all right, or lice in the head of one of her students. And it's then that we discover this group of people, this family called the Yules, and they will come into play later on in the story, but this is the first mention of them, Burris Yule. And obviously some very strong imagery here and characterization as to what he looks like, being the filthiest human Scout has ever seen. Some very disgusting kind of description. The backs of his hands were rusty, his fingernails were deep black into the quick. So just keep in mind this this person, because his family is going to play an important part in the novel later on down the line. So after Miss Caroline, quote-unquote, kicks him out, he kind of just leaves of his own volition. Ain't no snot-nosed slut of a school teacher ever can make me do anything. You ain't making me go nowhere. You just remember that. On Scout's way home, she finally reunites with Calpurnia, and again, we see a little bit of that characterization. Here, Calpurnia gives her the crackling bread, and they kind of squash whatever problems they were having there. A very, very, very important part of Chapter 3 is this kind of like roundup at the end, where Atticus and Scout sit down. She knows she's not supposed to read with him, as per Miss Caroline, but they come to an agreement to read secretly so that Miss Caroline doesn't know. And very, very important is, again, we see repetition of this blindness. So, number one, the first part you see it in is this discussion of the Yules over here. All right, they've been the disgrace of Macomb for 3 generations. They live like animals. He also says that the Yules are allowed to hunt out of season, which they in the town is usually viewed as a capital felony. But there's this, again, willful blindness. It says becoming blind to some of the Yules' activities. They kind of let these things go, all right? So again, just keep in mind that we see this, all these mentions of blindness, of vision in the story. And then you'll have a really, really, really important part here. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. This is a huge part of the story. And it really does kind of snap back around at the end of the story. So keep in mind that Atticus kind of introduces this point of view motif, really trying to get an idea of what a person is experiencing and not to make assumptions about anything. And the chapter also ends with Atticus being right, okay? This is another important thing that Harper Lee does to kind of close out the chapter, and she does it a lot of times. Atticus in this story is usually right. He is a source of great wisdom for the children and for the people of the town, and when she ends this chapter with those words, she is driving home that point. Okay, so that is chapter 3. I hope you enjoy your break. Don't forget to do a dialectical journal for chapter 3, and I will see you when we return.